Welcome back, everybody. Joe DeLeone, Ryan Roberts. Today, we've got a special show for you. We've got an interview with Ricky Stromberg, the starting center from Arkansas, who is one of the top centers in the 2023 NFL Draft, guy that we have graded as our top center. So we're going to get to hear from him coming up later on in the show. But today, at the top, we have some news in the NFL Draft world that we are going to be reacting to. One is a little bit more simple. It is the announcement that the Big 12 and the NFL are partnering to do a conference-wide pro day. We'll get to that later on. The first thing, though, Ryan, that we have to start off today's show with is a discussion regarding one of the top prospects in the 2023 NFL Draft, that being Jalen Carter, who has had a very tumultuous NFL Draft process. It has been very rocky since the NFL Combine, when there was a warrant issued for his arrest for reckless driving. We now have news today on the taping of this on Thursday, the 16th, that he is now going to be pleading no contest. He's going to be receiving 12 months probation. He's also going to have to do 80 hours of community service and pay a $1,000 fine. So we have a little bit more of an understanding of his legal situation, but where now the discussion lies is the performance at his Georgia Pro Day, where he did not run a 40. He showed up 9 pounds heavier and also struggled to complete drills. For some added context, Ryan, before we get into this, I did find out that part of the reason why he was apparently gassed is that he had no breaks in between drills. Now, do with that what you may, but it is just added context. The other thing, too, the weight thing, 9 pounds of weight fluctuation since the Combine isn't as significant in my eyes for a guy who is 300 pounds, because your weight is going to fluctuate a ton, especially depending on how much water you're drinking. But without that context, after we've added that, your thoughts on the current situation with Jalen Carter? How much are you weighing this on his draft stock as an evaluator?
Well, I mean, it was really interesting, Joe, because I thought for the longest time we weren't going to have a lot of clarity from the legality side of things, right? Like, because when it happened, I mean, it happened obviously right during the Combine when he was scheduled to have his media availability. And then all of a sudden, you're just kind of like, are they going to figure this all out before the NFL Draft comes around? Because it's less than 2 months, and we know that the legal process can be a very tumultuous, long process at times, right? Like, you know that sometimes has going to take a long time to find some sort of validity or understanding of a process. But now that we have that understanding, I think that we have come to the conclusion here that the legality side is not going to be the big crux in his process anymore, right? It's like, it's still, the optics on it are still really bad, ultimately, right? And there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to talk to him, and it's going to be a very unsettling conversation for both sides. But ultimately, I think NFL teams are going to be able to get past the whole legality side of the conversation. Mm-hmm. I have mixed feelings on the pro day stuff, because I do think that, I mean, we've seen players have to stop drills at times in the past due to cramping. Like, that's not like it's not like an attitude issue. That's like literally your body failing you issue at times, right? I think, though, for me,
it's also a preparation issue. Not to cut you off, it's a preparation issue, because for how much working out I did in college and when I was a college football player, look, as much as people want to sit here and say, like, oh, Rhode Island's not the same as Georgia, we still do workouts. Like, they're very difficult, hard workouts. Those strength coaches start at all levels and they work their way up. They all run the same programs. I never had any cramping issues. I was a long snapper and I was doing the same problems because I properly hydrated. It's proper preparation to set you up to not cramp. So, like, it all goes in line with where, and why I have a difficult time with this, Ryan, is that clearly wasn't prepared, but at the same time, with all the legal stuff he's dealing with, I'm sure that is mentally weighing on him in his preparation for the pro day.
That's the biggest thing that I was going to hit on, is that cramping isn't always just a hydration issue. Mm-hmm. For Jalen Carter, he's been dealing with a lot, man. There's a lot of mentally taxing things. And I know people are going to say, well, that's his own fault. And sure, I'm not saying that he is innocent in that fact. But the other fact of the matter is that we have a little empathy towards the situation that he's dealing with, trying to get ready for this type of event, is that when you are stressed out, when you are not mentally right, it affects your body in other ways. It does. So I look, I think that we need to not just hyper focus on the workout as it is, because like there's a lot of events leading up to it that I think you could look at and say like he just probably wasn't in the right headspace for this. Like he probably just wasn't ready to tackle this because he's tackling a bunch of other stuff that have nothing to do with what he's doing on the field. So at the end of the day, his position in the draft for me is ultimately going to be based upon the team meetings, the comforts in talking to that player. And then obviously when the scouts and general managers and decision makers for each of these organizations in the NFL do their due diligence and do their research, they're going to call the University of Georgia, right? They're going to call that coaching staff. They're going to talk to the people behind the scenes, and they're going to develop a comprehensive understanding of, is he a problem in the building? Is he a hard worker? Those things will tangibly come to the forefront at some points. So I think that there's just a lot to figure out here. There's a lot to understand. And I honestly I don't want to hyper focus and overreact to one workout in a 2-hour period because we don't know what would have happened. I mean, I don't imagine we have this situation if he worked out in Indianapolis when everything was kind of set forth, right? When, just a couple weeks ago. So I don't want to hyper focus on this one event because there's a lot of layers to this whole conversation with Jalen Carter, and there's a lot more to uncover and a lot more homework that teams are doing on him.
Right. I think that this is more of an indicator for NFL teams where I think coming into this, without all this stuff happening at the beginning of the draft process, a lot of teams might not have been doing this much homework on a guy. They might have been coming in thick, and as long as he seems like a normal guy and there's no issues,
tape's great. Everyone around him says that's fine, like he's good, and you just check those boxes, right? To your point. Yep.
Right, but so now we go from the arrest warrant to the bad pro day. I think that with all of those indicators, now they're going to do extra digging, extra work, which you, as a prospect, you never want. You never want a team that has to do extra work to now figure out, okay, he's got all these issues, all this stuff's happened over the past couple months. What is this kid's deal? Are we going to bring him in? Is he going to be a problem? Is he going to be, and I said this on a previous show we did, is he somebody that on a Thursday night before a game, when we're on the road or we've got a home game coming up, I'm going to get a phone call at 2:00 in the morning that he did something stupid? And I'm not saying that he will, but that is how NFL front offices and coaching staffs think when they're making these decisions. They don't want a guy that they have to worry about on a week-to-week basis. He might mature. He might figure it out. He is a young individual. We all make stupid mistakes when we're young. But that is the thought process of the NFL, is can this be fixed? Can this be rectified? And is he going to be a consistent problem?
And how in-depth do these background checks go, just for some people's context? NFL teams hire private investigators for this type of stuff. Like they have legitimate sleuths trying to find every little background nugget that they will find on Jalen Carter. So I think you're right, Joe. I think it kind of puts a target on his back. There's a more in-depth background check that's going to happen, and everything that you need to know, everything that should be known about Jalen Carter to make yourself comfortable is going to be known by these NFL teams. That's from social media checks to background checks to family life to everything. They're going to find it out. So if he's a good person off the field, and this is just a one-stop really bad decision, then everything will be fine. And it'll all work out, in my opinion. But like you said, there's a couple indicators that we might need to do more homework here, right? And this is almost like the verification process when you go back and watch film. It's like, I saw the kid test at the combine. He ran a lot faster than I thought he would. I had to go back and check the tape. Well, this is one of those sirens start going off. Man, there's a couple things that are kind of adding up together here. I might need to go back and do more digging and more homework on a player and see if he's a player I can trust. Because we use that word lightly in the NFL circles because the free agency era and things change so quickly and players go from team to team so often now. But when a team does invest in a player, it's about trust. Can I trust that player to be a great player on the field? But even more than that, can I trust that player to be a good representative of my organization? And there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to be now trying to get a deeper understanding of, is this just a one-shot bad decision on Jalen Carter's part? Or is this just kind of more things unraveling, that there are a lot more skeletons in the closet that we know of?
Right. Now, let me ask you this, Ryan. Do you think realistically what's the furthest he maybe falls? Or does he not even fall at all? And I think the other thing, too, that we now have to take into account, the top 4 picks are going to be quarterbacks. They're going to be quarterbacks. That third pick by the Cardinals should be traded. I would be stunned if it's not. But it is likely going to be traded based on what happened with the Panthers moving up to that number 1 spot. So if all 4 of those top picks are quarterbacks, the first spot we're going to see a defensive player potentially isn't until 5 for the Seattle Seahawks if they aren't the team that trades up and moves up. So if after that, say that's Will Anderson, there might be other teams that want to address other needs before taking a troubled defensive tackle that they've got question marks on. So realistically, in your eyes, how far do you see him falling?
It's still not as much as some people think. I think there's some people that legitimately think this could be a mid-first, late first round type of slide. I think there are some people that think it might be even further than that. I don't. I think that this is still a player that's going to go in the top 10. When I look at how the top 10 is kind of organized and what is the teams that are a part of it, I think that at worst, he goes number 10 to the Philadelphia Eagles with the 10th overall selection. That's the spot I look at, man, because I do agree with a lot of the people that have a opinion out there that maybe he needs to go to a good organization that has a good infrastructure and good support around him. Maybe that's possible. But then the Philadelphia Eagles would be a really good spot for him in that instance, right? You're talking about a guy like Fletcher Cox that's still in the room, that's been there for a long time. You talk about Brandon Graham that's in that defensive line room. You talk about a team that just went to the Super Bowl and had probably the best roster in the NFL last year.
And I think there's his former teammates in Jordan Davis
next to him
too. So he's going into a comfortable situation, which might be good or bad, but at the same time, being around familiar faces that are a little more mature, that have been around the league, and then also are more connected to the veteran guys, like that might help a guy like Jalen Carter. I actually really like him ending up at the Philadelphia Eagles, as much as that pains me as a Giants fan. Like that might be best for his NFL future if he goes to a team that has notoriously drafted a lot of Georgia guys lately.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great point. I completely even space on the fact that Jordan Davis is the nose tackle for them now, and Kobe Dean's kind of the linebacker in waiting after both the linebackers left this offseason. So it's another great layer to the conversation. And ultimately, I still think that a team is going to take a gamble on a player that is, in my opinion, the best football player in this draft. That's just kind of where I am with it, right? We're not talking about a guy that was like, well, yeah, first round talent, but he's like 10 through 15 in like the hierarchy of the overall draft class. Like this is a kid that could argue that he is the best overall player in the 2023 NFL draft. So I don't see him falling out of the top 10 unless the off the field stuff is just like horrific, man. If there's just more skeletons in the closet that we don't know about. If it is strictly the passing of the legality issues and, him not being overly prepared for the pro day because of some off the field issues that he's dealing with. If that's what we're dealing with here, I think he doesn't fall out of the top 10. If there's more in the closet though, then obviously that will change, but I don't think he gets out of the top 10 personally right now.
Yeah, we'll see what ends up happening with Jalen Carter. Hopefully things do work out for him. We're obviously rooting for him because, as you mentioned, we're both very big fans of him. We are both have him graded very, very highly, and if things do work out, he's going to be an incredibly dominant defensive tackle in the NFL. Ryan, I want to hit on here before we get to hearing from Ricky Stromberg. There was news that kind of went under the radar, but in the NFL draft landscape, I think has some implications that I'd love to discuss, and it's also in the college football landscape. The Big 12 and the NFL are partnering to put on a pro day that will replace on-campus pro days going forward that is supposed to be happening in Texas. Now, a couple of things come to mind with me for this, Ryan. In one, is this the route that we might end up going that replaces the NFL Combine? Because some people think and have been saying that the individual pro days, more guys participate in them. Some people think that they're more beneficial for the players and that there's going to be better results because these players are in comfortable situations. Is this a route for replacing the NFL Combine in the way that it has been put on and allow for more regional combines based on conference? And then the other layer of this, I frankly kind of hate it. I got to bring this up. I absolutely hate this because the whole point of the pro day, the individual school pro day, is allowing guys that also on the back end of the roster that were not granted the same microscope that the big guys get at the NFL Combine. You get kickers and punters and guys that are going to be great special teams players, the ability to showcase that when teams are there to watch the big guys, their opportunity to shine when maybe they don't get the same amount of recognition. But the other fold to this, Ryan, is it also removes the whole point of the pro day, which is the comfort level of training in your own facility, working with your strength coach, so that you are doing a routine that you have prepared and you are familiar with. It is supposed to set you up for better success than the combine, which is why a lot of these college guys opt to do the pro day rather than the combine. But instead, it almost seems like a counter move by the NFL to prevent this from happening.
Well, and I think another layer that you talked about, Joe, not even just the lower level players on the roster that are trying to get a spot, but you know that at these bigger pro days for these like group of five, I mean, for these Power 5 type of schools, for these high FBS schools, there's a lot of small school kids that are usually end up coming too, right? To get that extra look because, I mean, there's just some schools that scouts aren't going to stop at because it's just not worth their time, right? So a player that maybe goes to Fordham, for instance, right? It's like a smaller level player. He might go to Rutgers' pro day, for instance, right? Or, whatever the case might be.
A common one is if you have a talented player at Rice that's like a fringe player, he might go to, I don't actually know where Rice is in Texas, but like just throwing it out, he might go to TCU's pro day. Let's just throw that out there. Like he might go, if he's a fringe player, he might need that workout if he wasn't invited to the NFL Combine.
And it also gives those lower level guys more opportunities because they can still work out at their own pro day. They can go to a couple bigger pro days. It just gives more opportunities to get looks. So I hate that fact for those kids, especially the lower level players. I understand why this is a thing, though. I do understand it because scouts want all the players in one spot because it's easier for them, right? The travel implications. I'm telling you, that's why it is.
I know.
That's why it is.
That's why it is. Right, but I hate the reasoning. But continue.
They want everybody in the same spot, in the same environment, so they don't have to deal with the numbers being different from place to place and from their travel plans and their the difficulties of travel. That's why the NFL wants this. They're making it easier for NFL teams and for NFL scouts. That's why this is happening. And also, there is part of it where it's like numbers at certain facilities can't be as trusted as at other facilities. There's places that have fast tracks and that don't record very well. I mean, we'll just put it like that, right? But in a centralized location, you have a better opportunity to have verified and correct information. That is true. I would agree with that. But I also think that those players have worked very hard to get their opportunity at their school and to have that type of thing, right? So it might be better for the NFL. But at the end of the day, man, aren't we supposed to be doing what's best for the players? Like, isn't that what it is also is? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what the lower level kids, the kids that are coming to these bigger pro days, the guys that get their opportunity after 4, 5, 6 years in some cases of players putting blood, sweat, and tears into their program. Can't they at least have one day where they can be comfortable in their own skin, on their own track, on their own field, in their own stadium? Like, let's offer them that.
Sleep in their own bed and get the opportunity. Again, you
can't say you're a players' league. You can't say that you're there for the athletes when in result you're doing things that are not best for the athlete, if that makes sense.
This sucks so much. It sucks so much. As a former player, this pisses me off so much. Who had trouble getting into my own freaking pro day because I, didn't have massive NFL interest. It was a little bit more of a difficult task. It ended up getting canceled because of COVID, but it is already a hard process to make sure you're allowed to compete at your own pro day. The other part of this too, Ryan, guys that don't have agents, what the hell are they supposed to do? Who's covering the cost of travel? Is it just tough sledding if you're not a guy that has an access to funds, either your own personal funds or money from your family or from an agent to cover the costs of travel to get there? Like, for example, I'm trying to think what BYU, for instance, this is supposed to be in Texas. What if there's a guy on the BYU roster that has been busting his butt and he's a receiver who didn't sign with an agent but has a possible shot? What the heck is he supposed to do?
And then also the travel implications of what if a flight gets canceled? What if a car breaks down? What if, like, there's a lot of different variables that could go wrong in this situation, which is, again, you're hurting the comfort of these players and performing to their best of the ability in the environment. But Joe, I knew this was coming this way, man. I knew it was going to go this way because I remember when COVID hit, you already used the COVID situation. I remember that's when like the hub football camp started becoming a thing, right? Where it's like, we're going to centralize all these things together. They were trying to get all the players in the transfer portal together so that they get extra eyes on them and centralized locations. This is how it was always going to go. Regionalizing is how it is going to be eventually. I think about 4 to 5 years from now, like these schools having a single pro day, just their guys, is not going to be a thing anymore. It's going to be a regionalized thing. That's how I think it's going.
Yeah, and they started with the lamest conference, Power 5 conference possible because they knew it would be an easy leg to tackle, and I'm sure that there are going to be bigger trees for them to knock down to try and get the SEC, the Big Ten, and whatnot to cooperate with this. Because I wouldn't be surprised if a conference like the SEC doesn't heavily push back. Like it might be, I would bet that is probably the last conference to say yes to something like this. And they're probably going to be years down the line before they agree to it.
You know what I'm curious about is this regionalized combine, is it going to be televised? That's my biggest thing.
I feel like it will be because considering the fact that the Georgia Pro Day and the Clemson Pro Day was on TV, the NFL Network, and just from me knowing my background on broadcasting as a producer, they have air to fill. They have so much time to fill. So I think that they gladly will air these things and they will be viewable to the public, which I guess is good for us as media members and as
it's very good for media members. It's very good for media members. And it's right. So for the programs, it's a potential moneymaker. Maybe that wasn't on the table. But to your point, like if Alabama has their pro day that is, broadcasted every single year, they might be a team that would fight against this because it's like, no, we're making our own money. We don't need your money. Like, we don't need to be a part of your package. Like, we'll make our own money out of this kind of conversation, right? So, but at the end of the day, man, this was always how it's going to happen because no matter how much the NFL is going to try to preach that they are best for the players, the young men, we know what it's actually about. Yeah, making it easier for the people that are in charge.
No, absolutely. We got a lot that we have to still get to during this draft cycle. Ryan, we're going to talk to Ricky Stromberg in a quick second. We've got a couple minutes before we get to that. Just quick thoughts on Ricky Stromberg, though, getting to hear from him. Like, what did you think about that conversation we had with him, which our listeners are going to get to, or our viewers are going to get to hear? I thought he was a really cool kid to talk to. Seems like a really smart guy. I'm still shocked that the NFL isn't that high on him. Like, I really thought that the NFL would be more.
Well, he still has a chance to be a day 2 pick, though. Like, I wouldn't say they're not high on him, but like, they're definitely not as high as we are, for sure. Like, I get that.
I can understand having Luke Whippler or Joe Tippmann ahead of him, but that's 2 guys. Like, is John Michael Schmitz like that much better? I think a lot of the positives of John Michael Schmitz you get from Stromberg. And on top of that, he's a great athlete. He's a better athlete than a John Michael Schmitz. It's one of those nitpicky moves. And again, I said it before, he is Creed Humphrey in my eyes.
It could be, man, because he's one of those guys that just kind of checks all the boxes on the film, right? And I think that's honestly, for me, having that interview with him, continue to just check boxes. Like, you could hear the intelligence he has. He sounds like a great teammate, man. I love the part during the interview, and I'm excited for people to hear it when we started talking about some of when we talked about Drew Sanders in the 2023 NFL draft, and we talked about Rocket Sanders, who's the running back that's coming back to Arkansas, that could potentially be in the 2024 class. And man, he spoke so highly of both guys, And like sometimes when you put those guys on kind of that opportunity to talk about their players, they're very like, they're like very regimented with how they respond to it. It's like, like very neat cliche things like, hard worker, blah, blah, blah. But he really went in depth with both guys, which I thought was really cool, and trying to give some background. So, man, I genuinely enjoyed that conversation. I think he's a great young man.
Yeah, the context he provided on Drew Sanders was great, and the plays that he talked about. But we're going to get to that really soon, folks. Thank you for joining us on today's episode of The First Team. Joe DeLeone, Ryan Roberts. We got more coming your way. Stay tuned for Ricky Stromberg.
Welcome to the Believe in NFL Draft Prospect podcast. It is an interview edition because we are now just weeks away from the 2023 NFL Draft finally kicking off. Feels like this process has been going on forever, man. But we have joining myself, Ryan Roberts, and Joe DeLeone on the podcast today, Mr. Ricky Stromberg, center out of the University of Arkansas. If anybody has watched their show over the last 2 years, because Ricky's been eligible now for 2 cycles, we've been big fans. And you were just our number one center, obviously, on the board, Ricky, in the 2023 NFL draft when we did our recent center rankings. So I guess, just kind of filling us in, Ricky, before we get into kind of your backstory and everything, man. We're past the combine, pro days in front of us, a few weeks away from the NFL draft finally getting here, man. How's everything been kind of leading up to to today, really?
Yeah, so it's all been great. It was a great process. So I got done. I didn't play in the bowl game, so I was done early, actually. I went home in December, and I was working out there, like, kind of prepping, kind of taking a little bit of like a week off or whatever from the season. So I went home, and then after that, went off to training. I trained in APEC in Fort Worth, which is a great place. I met some cool guys down there. But the whole process was exciting. I know I went to the Shrine Bowl. That's when the interviews, when I first started doing interviews, I'll tell you, I was really, really nervous for them at first. I was like, oh, gosh, here we go. Whatever. So I just went in. But all of them went good. I felt good about all of it. And then transitioning to the combine, that's when I did some formal interviews and stuff. And those went all well, too. But it's been really fun because you grew up watching. I grew up watching the combine, being in it. Yeah. It was so cool.
Yeah, man. I gotta ask the always fun thing to ask after the interviews are done. Or what's the weirdest question you gotta ask? I gotta know. Did you get any of the weird ones, or were they kind of tame this year?
I didn't. I'm trying to think. I had 6 formals, but I don't think I got any weird. I was told I was going to get weird questions. I've heard people were telling me, hey, they're going to ask you. They could ask you this or this. I would have to think on it. If I think on it, let me get back to you at the end of this.
It must not have been that weird though. If you don't remember, they must have been kind of normal.
Exactly. Yeah. So it really wasn't that weird, honestly.
That's
good.
Well, Ricky, I definitely want to get into obviously a lot of the process, but I actually wanted to kind of touch base a little bit on your background. I know that you're a Oklahoma guy. I think Tulsa originally, grew up there and everything. I guess my main question is, how did you end up at Arkansas? Like, what's kind of the backstory to how you got to being a part of the program?
Yeah, so I was originally committed to Tulsa University. Tulsa's about like 15 minutes from my house. And so I was originally committed there for the longest. I committed there in the summer of, I think, 2018 is my senior year. Yeah, 2018. I was there committed from June to all the way up until a day before signing day. And then I had a bunch of other offers, but they were smaller schools. They weren't Power 5, and I really want to play in the Power 5. And so Arkansas, I was talking for the past week, and I was like, okay, maybe it's going to happen. Maybe it's I didn't know. And then I think it was the day before signing day they offered me, and I was like, I just took it. I just took it. Well, it's the best decision I ever made.
Well, yeah, and so when you were offered by Arkansas and you made the decision to go, what was Sam Pittman's role at that time? Was he head coach yet, or was still offensive line coach?
No. So he wasn't there. I got recruited by Morris. Chad Morris was his last year there.
Gotcha.
So I had my O-line coach was Dustin Fry. I don't know if you guys know him. He was at SMU before, but that was the staff that was there. They was there for 1 year, and Coach Morris got fired in November, and then Coach Pitt came in middle of January. I think they hired him.
For you being an offensive lineman and them hiring an offensive line coach and the ongoing gag, just from the outside, not gag, but the thought of Sam Pittman, everyone's like, oh, this is a real football guy, real tough guy. You're getting a true offensive line coach in Sam Pittman being the head coach of Arkansas. For you as an offensive lineman, what was it like having him leading your team? Does he coach the team like an old lineman? Does that help your approach and your demeanor as a player?
Yeah. So he didn't really coach. I mean, since he was an O-line coach, he would come in and he would come into our meetings every once in a while, because he's an O-line guy, so he wants to come hang out and stuff. But I mean, he never during Indy's the time he has the time to walk around, he would walk straight over the O-line first for sure, and then kind of coach in a little bit. But he was more focused on being a head coach, I think, at the time. So he wasn't really around too much. But when I first heard of him, I was excited. I was like, wow, this is the offensive line guru. He put 2 guys, I think, in the first round before he came to Arkansas, from the past year. Was it Andrew Thomas and another guy, I think, right?
Yep.
Those 2 guys. But I was like, wow, this guy's about to come. So it was really cool when he first came in the building. I first met him. It was cool, and then on from there, it was great. My relationship with him was great throughout the 3 years he was there, or I was there when he got there.
And how do you feel, Ricky, as far as like the future of Arkansas football? Because I mean, I've seen a lot of great signs, obviously, out of the team over the last couple of years under Coach Pittman. Seems to be kind of a big emphasis on toughness and physicality and kind of doing everything the right way. What are your expectations just of where Arkansas is going to go from where you guys left it here?
Yeah, I think they're trending up. I think they have a lot. I mean, I know their team's younger this year. I know they got some transfers. It's kind of crazy because when I came in there, like I knew everybody, and like this past year I left, and I actually went and worked out there today during the day, and I saw the guys that I knew, but there's a lot. It's a younger team, it's younger guys. I know two of my great friends are still there. They're playing the offensive line, but I think it's trending up. I really do because the way Coach Pitt runs the culture or runs the program, like type of culture they have, I think it's only trending up from here. And they have a bunch of younger guys coming in that are good players, I think. So I think it's only the more they grow, the more leadership skills they're going to obtain. So I think it'll be good for them.
So Ricky, a lot of people believed that after your junior year or the previous draft cycle that if you entered, you would have been one of the higher centers selected or possibly the highest center drafted in the 2022 class. You decided to go back with eligibility remaining. What impacted that decision? Why did you decide that you wanted to go back and play for another year?
Yeah, so after the season I went and talked to Coach Pitt and he told me my grades, and there was some like 3 to 4s, and then there was also like 5 to 6. I'm trying to remember. It's like 5 to 6. So it wasn't like I thought it would be. I thought it would be my head. I was like, okay, like if it's 2 to 3 grades, a lot. Most of the teams say that, like, yeah, I'm going to go. It's 3 to 4, and then some 5 to 6, 5, 6. That was like the majority. Those two type of grades were what I was getting back. Mm-hmm. So then I was thinking, I was like, okay, like I knew what's the guy from Iowa? His name that came out last year,
Linderbaum.
I knew he was number one for sure. I know there was a mix of them. So I thought, like, I'm a junior. I've played. This is my second year at center. I was like, it would not hurt coming back at all. And I have my best friends here. They're all coming back from another season, so it's like it was kind of almost like easy. It was all right. Well, it's like, go out, go get undrafted, or be late, or whatever could have happened, or come back, have another year of football. I'm comfortable here. I can grow here. I have my friends here, closer to family, so it's kind of easy.
Well, and I know obviously you mentioned that obviously the last 3 years now at center. I think you started played a little bit of guard as a freshman, if I remember correctly.
I started 2 games at. Oh my gosh, it was a while ago. 2 games at left guard, and then I moved over for the rest of the season at right guard.
So how foreign was the center position to you? Is this something that you dabbled in during your high school career? Was that kind of just a brand new thing for you?
It's funny. It's funny to say that because so I grew up wanting to play like defensive end and stuff. And my dad, like, really? I remember one day I was shooting hoops with my dad. I was like in 7th grade. He was like, you know what? He's like, out of nowhere. He's like, you know what? You'd make a really good center. And I was like, no. Like, I'm a defensive tackle. I'm a defensive end. And it turns out, I moved to center. I did play center in high school for 3 games. I was always a tackle though in high school. Yeah. And I bumped back out the tackle during my senior year. But then when I moved to center and I started like figuring out, like I started like, because when you play, like when I first got there, I was learning. It was all in the center, So I was learning football, but not as much as I think I should be. And when I moved to center, it was like I started learning how to ID defenses and all this stuff. And the coach that was there at the time was a great coach, and he taught it well to me. So I think it was a natural fit. I think it fits perfectly.
Well, and Ricky, could I ask, from the general perspective, because, you already mentioned a little bit about the combine and going out to East West and everything, but you've been a lot of different places now, right? Like you're talking about Arkansas, you're down in Texas training, you go up to Las Vegas. That's a pretty wild experience. You go out to Indianapolis, which is a crazy, fun little city for people that have never been out there. What's just been the hustle and bustle of this process has to be, I don't want to know if it's fun, if it's anxious, like what's the emotions kind of working through all this?
Yeah, honestly, I think it's fun. I would say I enjoyed the combine a little bit more just because like I grew up watching that one. The All-Star game, I did enjoy that. It is definitely anxious though when I get there. But when I'm in it though, when I'm going through interviews or when I'm going through per se, like I'm at the Shrine Bowl doing practices or like combine if I'm doing drills, we do the workout day. Like it all falls like I'm not anxious anymore. I'm having fun. It's exciting. But it definitely is. It is like the thought of going before is like I was a little nervous, but I was mainly excited. I think it was excited nerves. But I really enjoyed it. Like walking in the combine, that was so cool. My parents came up too. They drove up from Tulsa, so I was like, we all got the experience. And my dad grew up watching it, so It was cool.
Dude, it's so wild because this was the first year I was there at Combine, obviously covering it from media perspective. And that was the first time they ever let media in the stadium as well. And I walked into Lucas Oil. I was like, I'd never been there before, So I'm like, oh, this is real, man. Like, this is legit.
Their stadium is cool, too. Like, I didn't realize how big their stadium is. When you walk in, it's a high ceiling up there. It's like, it reminds me of AT&T. I played at AT&T. We played at A&M every year. So it reminded me a little bit of AT&T. I was like, this is a sick stadium. But it was, especially the fan part, too. Whenever they started they're letting fans come now. I think that's a really cool deal. Especially for the day before, the quarterbacks were out there, and oh my gosh, there's people everywhere.
Did you notice the fans when you were on the field? Is that like something that you could notice, or is it? I always think conceptually it's cool, but it just seems odd. Fans sitting and watching
a little bit. You can kind of notice them. It's funny because I finished the drill, I could hear my mom like screaming way in front. But you can, like, when you're doing the stuff, you're not thinking about it. Like in a football game, I'm not thinking about the 80,000 people there. I'm really not when I'm playing. So you don't really think about it. But after, it's always cool to go up. It was cool to go up in the stands and see my family there. After
Ricky, speaking on the Combine, though, a little bit more, and I know I asked you a question about the interviews earlier, but who have you been, like, meeting with the most? Who do you think you've really connected with the most throughout this process amongst these NFL teams?
Yeah, so I would say from the day I declared to now, I would say I've interacted with the Jets the most. If I'm trying to think, the Jets have been really interested. The Bears, I'm taking a visit. I don't know if I'm supposed to say this or not, but I don't think it's going to hurt me if I do. But I'm taking a visit to Chicago like April 2nd, doing the 30 visit, and then I have one with Washington the 19th.
Awesome.
But throughout the whole week, I think I went to the Combine now. I think the Browns are pretty interested. I had them with the Steelers, Browns, Jets, Jags, Bills, and Commanders. But I think I'd say Jets, Bears, and I'd say Browns. I'd say those three that stick out. Steelers too.
You being an Oklahoma guy, Ricky, was there a favorite team growing up, or was there allegiance at all?
Yeah, it was the Chicago Bears. My parents from Chicago.
Nice.
So they grew up in Chicago. My dad grew up watching the '85 Bears. They went to every single game when they were really good. So I grew up like a diehard Bears fan.
So what's that feeling like then, Evan? That being one of your 2 top 30 visits, like what's that like for you?
Yeah, when I heard about it as one of my visits, I was like, I immediately called my dad. I was like, you're not gonna believe this. Like, it's just so surreal. It's like, I don't know. It's hard to. At first, it's like I'm like kind of like a kid. Like my like the little kid in me is like freaking out. Like, oh, let's go. And then it's kind of like Then it's like kind of like your head's like, all right, now it's like down to business, But in that moment, it was really cool. But I'm really excited to go up there. I've been in Chicago plenty of times, like as a kid. So I'm so excited to go back up there.
That's awesome, man. I mean, literally, you mentioned the Combine experience, obviously getting up to Chicago now, kind of reminiscing a little bit and talking with your dad and everything. That's really dope, man. That really is. Yeah. Ricky, if I could, before we finish up with you, I would love to ask you about 2 different players. One is in the 2023 NFL draft. I would love to ask you about a guy that's probably more of the 2024 kid that went back to school.
Yeah, go ahead.
Everyone has been talking a lot about, and Joe's a big fan of him as well, Mr. Drew Sanders that plays linebacker, obviously, for Arkansas. Now, I know you're probably seeing more of the scout team defensive players on a day-to-day basis when you guys are working team and everything, but just kind of seeing Drew as a guy that was only there for 1 year, played a lot on the edge at Alabama, obviously, and then transitioned to a true off-ball linebacker. What for you sets him apart as a football player? Like, what makes him special?
I think his like passion for the game, like not just that, but like his passion for the game is so deep. I think that like he plays so hard. His physicality and his athletic ability to be that physical, that athletic, and that big, to be able to move like he does. He moves like a DB. So it's like he's a guy you look at. I remember he came in the spring. He came down. We were running some simple inside zone play. He came downhill and we smacked each other. But like I have never been hit that hard from a linebacker before. And I was like, wow. Like, and he's also very, very athletic. He can swim around. Like he's swimming before. So it's like he's tough to block, but he's just so special because he has all those traits with him. So.
And then the second guy that's returning is a guy that you got to block for a lot. I'm a big fan of Rocket Sanders, man. Got to say, at running back position. What's it been like blocking for him over the last couple of years? And what for you stands out about his game?
Yeah, Rocket's a mature young guy in my eyes. Because I call him young because he came in 2 years before me. He was a freshman when I was a junior, so I thought in my head he was younger. But when he came in, he's the way he carried himself like he's been there for like 4 years already. He has great vision as a running back, I think, and he's a good leader too. Rocket's just a great overall guy, and I enjoyed playing with him. He was awesome to play with. I mean, coming off the sideline, say we got to run stuff like. He'd come over like, hey, like this, he'd be like, hey, that's my bad. I should have hit this hole. Or like we come off, hey, Rocket, my bad. He's like, no, you're good. Like there's no drama with Rocket. He's really mature, like straight to the point type of guy. So
love it. And I guess my last question, Ricky, and I'll hit Joe in case he wants to ask anything extra is, it seems like by everything you've told us as far as your family, it sounds like you have a really close-knit family. And I would just kind of love to hear maybe a little bit about how important they've been in this process and maybe how you're going to kind of spend your draft day and celebrate with them a little bit.
Yeah, no, my parents have been there. My mom, my dad, my two brothers, and my sister, they've been there for me since I was like super little. I mean, I know my parent, I remember in kindergarten, my dad, I didn't want to play football in kindergarten. My dad was like, I was like, I don't want to play. He's like, nope, you're playing. But thank God he put me back in football. But I mean, they growing up, I mean, they come to every Arkansas game I've had, they've been to. I don't think they've never missed one game that's home or away. Like we played at BYU, they drove to BYU. They're there. Like wherever we go. We played in Tampa, they drive to Tampa. They love traveling, but they also just want to come see me. Like they want to support. So it's been like incredible. And then like going to the combine, you know, my dad, they fly out to Vegas for the Shrine game. They drive up to Indianapolis for the combine. So like they're always there. And that's something that like I let my family's, I'm super close to my family, like you said. And then for draft party, I'm having it in Tulsa, Oklahoma at my house. Just going to be, you know, family, aunts and uncles I've grew up with. And I'm so excited to like share that moment with them. Cause like, it's not, and I know this sounds cliche, but it's not cliche, but I think it's just true. Like I wouldn't be where I am without them and the support that they've given me. Like, and that includes like, you know, car rides to games and, you know, support, like, you know, tough love and things like that. So it's like, it's going to be cool to spend that moment with them because we can all celebrate it. I feel like in my head. So.
Love it. Well, again, joined by Ricky Stromberg, star center for the Arkansas Razorbacks 2023 NFL Draft prospect. Ricky, I know it's been very busy for you throughout this time, man. You got the top 30 visits coming up. It's only a few weeks till draft day, but we really do appreciate you for joining the show, man. Wishing you the best of luck. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I enjoyed it. Thank you, guys.